Welcome everyone to our first Friday of spring 2021. Woo! Um, so good that you're here all together. It's really wonderful to have so many of you here with us, and it's great that you can join us in this way. So thank you. I know it can be very tiring with a lot of the Zoom and online meetings. So I'm so happy that you're here. It's lunchtime, so if you want to grab food and listen while we're doing this, of course, feel free and enjoy yourselves. Today, I'm very, very excited and honored and feel really privileged to have Jay Baker, an alumnus here from UCCS, VAPA Music, join us and talk a little bit about his work, his life, his experience here at UCCS, and where he is now and his goals for the future. And we're gonna really, I'll try to just moderate the time so that we can have questions from you all and you can join in. So Jay, without further ado, I'm gonna spotlight you. And hopefully that is what is the best way to do it. So yes, so John gave a clap. We can all do our virtual clapping. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I, my bio goes like I'm an interdisciplinary artist, musician, songwriter, visual artist. I like to work with like video, mixed media, collage. I kind of dabble through a lot of different disciplines. So interdisciplinary work was a really attractive part of VAPA stuff and has been my whole thing since. I'm from Southern Colorado, from a little town called Aguilar. Going up to Springs for college was the big city for like a rural kid like me, and that was really fun to jump in with such a kind crew. And I had amazing classmates and collaborators that helped me through that stuff. So that was really wonderful. These days, I've kind of gone through a winding path of jobs and careers, kind of always doing art in some way, some form or another. And went to New Mexico after Colorado and got into the art scene there and learned a ton about continuing to make art, like being small but tough sort of notions of creativity, and eventually jumped and kind of floated around for a bit, winding up in Oregon for grad school, which is something I did not think I would ever do, but the time came around. And so here I am, I'm studying Environmental Arts and Humanities at Oregon State University. I'm only in my second term of my first year. So I'm primarily interested in artist residencies and environmental justice, and working in the arts in any way I kind of can, since I am too compulsive to ever stop doing art stuff. So that's a bit about me and where I am right now.
Yeah, great. So tell us, maybe some people are curious, when you graduated from here, and maybe like some memorable experiences that you had here, and the third thing, any advice that you might want to give us to the students about both your experience here, your experience afterward. So let's start with maybe when you graduated and some more memorable, useful even experiences that you've had here.
Yeah, I graduated in 2012, winter of 2012. So I was at UCCS for 2008 through 2012. I have a lot of memorable experiences because it was just like full on music. When I came to UCCS, I didn't really know how to read music, and so I was like jumping in with Kurt Smith like day one, take for like a 3.5 hour long music theory class, and I was like super flailing for a long time. So it was, and then it was just go for forever. The big memorable experiences, a lot of them came from the honors ensemble stuff that I did. And I wasn't a particularly good bass player, but I was like the only bass player. So I got that gig pretty regularly. And it was the most like kind of bizarre working musician gig because you just kind of get dropped into all these different events on campus and off campus. And one of them was probably my worst gig ever, which is always a good conversation starter to talk with musicians about like, what was your worst gig? And yeah, a lot of good memorable
Oh,
moments.
I definitely want to hear the worst gig
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Now you have to share.
Sure. Yeah, I do. Yeah, it was so honors ensemble gig. We're playing at Denver Botanical Gardens for like a CU donors dinner, and they wanted ensembles from all the campuses, and so we we roll up, and we have like all of this junk. We have all of our stuff that we have to haul in. So I'm carrying my bass amp and my bass, and it's we get in there. Like, actually, I'm conflating two different things right now, actually. But there, that gig was rough, but it was not bad. But it rained. That was a whole other one. The worst gig, I'm conflating because there was another donors dinner. And we walk in the door at that place, and the Boulder faculty jazz trio is playing, and they've amassed this huge crowd. They're just killing it. Like, they're just ripping it up. And we're just like, oh man. And then they're like, okay, you guys are on. And so we like plug in our stuff. And it was Britt and Lizzie and I, and we played, and Britt's killing it. Lizzie and I are way too nervous. We're just like losing track of our songs. We've been playing these songs together for forever, and the crowd just disperses. They just like are like, oh god, and leave. And then we're just alone finally, and we're like, oh, finally it's some pressure's off. But Ray Walker, who's like the best bass player in Colorado, came up and grabbed a chair from across the room, walked it all the way up right in front of me. I'm playing bass, and just sits down and watches my hands. And then I'm trying to like show off. I'm trying to like I don't know. Like I'm like, he's a big deal. And then we get done with the song, and he's like, okay guys, stop. And I'm like, oh God. And he gives me some really kind words of advice in his card. He's like, hey man, if you want lessons, like you're trying to do these things. And, and so yeah, it just kind of schools me, but at least we're alone. Anyway, it was like just a heartbreaking, nerve-wracking experience.
It's so amazing how, you just got to get out there and just play and just, have these experiences, whether, they're good, whatever that means. I think they're all good. They're all like learning experiences. And it seems like you really did learn a lot from that, even though, it was really nerve-wracking and scary. So thank you for sharing that. I sort of put you on the spot.
No problem. It's a funny story. It was just a stressful night.
Yeah.
We left. We just like drove home in silence. It's just like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a learning experience here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what other, do you have any, so we talked about the worst experience. Do you have any like best experiences or ones that sort of stand out to you as sort of like maybe even guides that sort of changed or got you thinking differently, or, it could be any class or anything. What happened here that kind of got you thinking? And did anything happen here that got you thinking about where you are now? I mean, were there experiences? So I'm more curious about that.
Yeah, plenty of positives too. I'm sorry to start with such a negative, but I had like electroacoustic ensemble was huge for me. That was kind of where I kind of came into my own. I'm not a good like sight reader. I just like extra credited my way through theory classes, extra credited my way through sight singing and ear training. It's not my brain is not naturally designed for that. So those were really challenging for me. But like electroacoustic made a lot of sense, and I got to like grow and expand and be a part of those sort of situations. Also doing some of the plays were really fun, like working with like the Salome play was rife with drama, but it was a blast to play. And we did Merchant of Venice for the big tent thing. That was also a contentious play with a lot of controversy, but it was a blast to be a musician for. It was like really, really quite fun.
Hey Jay,
didn't you out as memories.
Didn't you do the Bacchae?
I don't know that I was directly a part of it.
Okay, I don't remember exactly, but that was around your years. That was the very first. That was the very first big theater music collaboration. That was Kevin Landis's very first year here. Anyway. Yeah,
I remember. I think Lizzie was like directly involved, and I helped her record some stuff for it. But I don't think I jumped into theater that cool. Early.
I'm really glad to hear the shout out to Electroacoustic Ensemble.
It was the best
because that's still going on. We still have that, and that's a core requirement for at least the performance students. Yeah. Awesome, Jay.
Yeah, and I love that we have some students who are involved in theater and have been involved with the theater and dance program in some way. And so I'm happy to also hear that was really prevalent for you, or that it's a memory that was very prevalent for you. Really wonderful. So were there any, so you took some time, so you graduated. I don't know if there's anything more you want to talk about your experiences here, or if there was any other memorable moment or changing, experiences for you. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was that this buffer period, right? This time after graduating, and you said 2012. So between 2012 and now, you had a lot of time to really, reflect and do research and learn and grow. And I saw you as a sound engineer, I believe, or some kind of a director in Albuquerque for a new music series. So I'm happy to hear anything about, the activities that you were doing when you were outside of, once you graduated. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've had a winding road post school. Like a lot of just jobs for work. Like I worked at Office Max for like years, and I worked at liquor stores, and I worked for a brewery delivering beer. I've worked, and I worked as a live sound engineer. But during all that, I would do volunteer jobs essentially. I worked for the Roost Creative Music Series, which is Mark Weaver's series that you played at, and it was an insanely cool experience. So I just did sound stuff for that and helped them with whatever they needed to run that, and that was a blast. And I got to meet just like all these amazing experimental artists that I look to all the time for know-how, experience, inspiration. So that was really good. I became part of Basement Films. It's a nonprofit in Albuquerque. They have a huge analog film archive. And so we would do different kind of shows and curations of that stuff to show off this huge collection. And it was the best thing to just spend a day looking through 16 millimeter films and, you know, digging for gold and all these like old films. It was a really important experience. So it's been a weird winding journey between my academia stuff. I really didn't want to go back to school at all. Once I graduated, I was very happy to be done. I just wanted to like make music and work and just like live life. But enough backbreaking blue collar jobs gets you wanting some more out of life. I got some like permanent injuries from jobs, and yeah, it's just like, you can't do it forever. As much as I like working with my whole body and stuff, it's not a sustainable way to live. So it's like, well, I got other things, and I've got to grow and become an adult during that time and learn about what I really want to do. So now I'm studying that.
I think it's really great to kind of get all of, like, to have all of those experiences and to kind of learn about yourself, and still on the side have this volunteer work that you're doing where you're sort of learning the technical parts, right? So you're learning the technical ways of doing shows, the audio engineering part, and then also the creative part, and meeting all these musicians and artists and working with film and visual art, which is another one of your passions. And so I can see how that kind of fed your passion even more, and you started to realize that there was more you really wanted to do. So very, very cool about that. Really interested in how you came to be in studying environmental arts and the humanities there. I mean, this environmental justice area, this is something that's really fascinating, and how you came to this and that and Oregon. So do you mind telling us a little bit about that process?
Yeah. So it was one of those kind of silly exercises about like thinking about what your dream job would be. Like, what would you really want to do? And it's a silly thing, and it can be largely useless. It was also like really important for me. So it was like, all right, dream scenario. I've kind of drifted from wanting to be like a professional touring musician thing that it's not really something I chased. It's not really a sort of lifestyle that works for me. But it was like, okay, well, like I have this passion for place and land, particularly. I got inspired somewhat by EcoSono stuff that you guys did. And I like the collaboration between environmental stuff and artwork, but I always was like, well, what is it's great, and it does these cool things and expands these knowledges, and you get to do these great recordings and be out there. It's like, what does that do for the whales though? Like, how can you make a measurable impact instead of, you can fund a lecture tour or share your music, and that's all really great. But it's like, I'm curious, like how you can make a measurable change or actual conservation in certain ways. And so I've just thought on that. I talked with John Gillen a long time about maybe starting something up where we do a residency or something where we camp out and make music, or just do like mini residencies. And it's kind of just never left.
Well, I want to just mention that John Gillen is yet another one of your colleagues who graduated as another alum here at UCCS. So you kept in touch with your classmates, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I got friends still that I talk to, and that's the best thing. Like people are like, "Cool, you got a music degree." It's like, well, yeah, it doesn't make me a lot of money, but the cool thing is like I know all these great musicians all over the place. Like, been able to follow Putu's trajectory and your trajectory and Glenn's, and get to follow Britt and see what Lizzie's doing, see what and if that's the benefit. That was the huge thing. I wouldn't, never made a lot of money with my degree, but I that's what I got out of it. Really, it was like these really important relationships.
Oh, that's wonderful. So tell us a little bit about this. I want to go back to your dream job. So did someone just come up and like ask you like big picture, what's your dream, or did it just come to you, or how did, and then what is it really like, how so tell us a little bit more, like I want a little more detail about this, and then
Sure.
what you're doing there now as a grad student, what your vision is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it was my wife and I were just talking, we were just talking about like, what are we going to do? We're existential artists, we've just been working jobs being like, what are we going to do? Like, what do we want to like do? So it's, yeah, like just trying to choose meaningful work is like an important thing. And so that was kind of like what kind of spurred me to do that. Cause I was thinking about going to grad school for like graphic design. Cause I'm like, I need to learn the tech and I can make a living, and that just became less and less appealing. And so it was like, well, I have this dream job. Maybe I can go to school to figure it out. And somebody suggested an interdisciplinary program for me because I'm an interdisciplinary artist, and it's hard for me to like choose a direct path. So I did, and I researched interdisciplinary stuff, and I found out about the MAIS program at Oregon State University, which seemed really cool. It was kind of like build your own degree program, and in researching that, I found the Environmental Arts and Humanities program, which was even more designed for interdisciplinary work around environmental thinking and applying, environmental lenses to the arts and humanities, which is exactly what I wanted to do. So, yeah, I started just asking around, and I talked to Dana Reason, an alumni of your guys's, and yeah, just kind of made the process happen and just move forward on something. Yeah.
Did you research like what other people with this degree are doing, and what are they? If so, what are some of the jobs that people are doing with this degree, or as they come out of this?
Yeah, it's all over the place. It's like crazy interdisciplinary. So yeah, the idea is to bring in people from a science background and get them more familiarized with the arts and humanities, and bring in people from the arts or philosophy or history, and give them more of an environmental science and environmental philosophy sort of background to bolster either side for a more unified, like interdisciplinary sort of mindset. So yeah, people are just all over the place. Some are working for nonprofits, some are working in renewable energy, some are teaching, obviously. They're so all over. I haven't researched a bunch of what the alumni have done. I read a lot of their papers trying to figure out like what projects people do, what sort of things, and they're just huge spread. It's just massive. So, which is my vibe. I like like all the options.
Do you yet see where so this is a master's program, right now,
Yeah.
that you're doing? Do you have a trajectory for your studies, or for your focus, or your topic, your sort of master's thesis topic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so mine is all in service of this sort of dream job of running or working for an arts nonprofit that works directly for land conservation or rehabilitation or things, and does all that in an environmental justice lens. That doesn't discount social justice issues. They're integral to these ideas, and kind of breaking down the like overly white and dry space of environmental studies. So yeah, that's really what I want to do. And so I'm in this program trying to learn how to do that and study art at the same time, because I can't not do that. So.
Right. So are you studying any music, or is it mostly visual, or is it both, a combination?
It's super like interdisciplinary. I'm working on a project for my projects class with Dana Reason on it's kind of an intermedia based stuff with site specific locations, sort of projections of body movement and dance, with a collaborator with one of my colleagues in the in the program, and yeah, kind of dealing with the idea of these artificial distanced presences and Zoom calls and memory. I have to submit my proposal soon, so I better get better words to describe what this is about. But yeah, working on projects pretty much always interdisciplinary. You know, and Tom Fo stuff, I released like an album, and that's a pretty straightforward singer-songwriter.
So tell us a little bit about Tom Fo, and because I don't know if everyone saw the information that I sent out. So can you tell us a little bit about Tom Fo and that project?
Yeah, kind of like end of UCCS period. I was in a band, and we kind of all ended up doing our own solo things and working together sometimes. So Tom Fo pseudonym kind of came out of there, kind of inspired by rap groups and things that I really loved at the time. And it's stuck around. So it's just been my kind of art persona. It helps me to have a distant, it's not like I change much, but it helps me be like, oh, this is Tom Fo stuff. So I do interdisciplinary work with that too. I do, but really like non-professional, non-academic-y. And I don't, you know, my songwriter stuff isn't very electroacoustic or experimental. It's, you know, just some songs. It's just trying to be like, or just a really natural human progression, apart from any sort of systemic or systematic anything. That's kind of the goal of that work.
How did you come up with the name Tom Fo? Is that a private question? I'm not sure.
No, it's great. It's nothing super interesting. Like I love I love the villain aesthetic, and so like I always loved buying the evil toys as a kid, but then they would be good guys. So I always liked this sort of like very evil aesthetic with someone who's just doing good work and like righteous or whatever. So it's just kind of a Batman villain name that was kind of cheesy and fun, and yeah, it's just like a simple, easy thing. And so that's how it came about. It's not.
That's wonderful. And the work, you know, I love, I'm sort of drawn to this idea that you're trying to just be honest about your work. You know, you're not trying to build something that isn't authentic to you, you know. And that's what I think is so meaningful about your work. It's just, you're really just authentic to you, and finding these avenues, these very clever, safe, you know, fun ways for you to enrich yourself through your various artwork. Wonderful. And I also was really drawn to this idea when you asked, you and your wife were talking about choosing meaningful work. You know, you could go down this one path, but then there's this, you know, meaningful work for the world around you, and your passion for the environment and place. And that even your intermedia work that you're doing is about place and the body. Even though it's at a distance, it's about place and body. So really, really wonderful. I kind of, I don't know, is there anything else you wanted to share about maybe advice for students? Something that you know, I want to start opening up the window here for people to ask questions and talk to you directly, and have the other faculty also ask you questions. But is there anything in the like before we get there that you want to just, I don't know, any advice, like something you learned that you're like, if someone told me this, it would have been really helpful, you know?
Yeah, it's hard to give advice now, particularly in the current COVID context. So I'm going to steer clear from like real, like, do these. It doesn't make any sense. Like everybody doing school now is just like in a totally different world, in a totally different context, and it's annoying when people that were never in that context try and tell you how to do anything.
Sure.
I will say, like, my one helpful thing that I keep in my head that has helped a few people around me lately, mm-hmm. Just, you know, my anecdotal evidence for something useful is it is that I think it's a Da Vinci quote or something. I don't know, but it's like no piece of art is ever finished, only abandoned. And it's been really, really useful to me. Like especially for someone who has like kind of that typical affinity with abandoned places and the beauty of that. It's like extending that to your own work is really good. And my wife's a writer, so I know a ton of other writers as well. And like writers, even more so than like musicians or artists, have this really hard time finishing a piece, like trying to know when something's done. And it's good to know that it just never will. You just have to choose how you're going to abandon this thing that you love, and it's hard. But
that's so amazing, because just yesterday in my sound art class, I was talking that I found a quote by Richard Chartier about, he just put out an album in November, and his questions to himself was like, is it done? Should it be done? When is it done? Why I'm putting it out into the world, but maybe I should maybe it's not finished. Actually, I want to change stuff now, and now that I put it out there, and I totally know this feeling, of like you put something out there and it's like an album, and then you're thinking like, well, actually, no, I want to take it back. I want to redo this. I want to redo that, and
yeah.
And then just the projects that I've done that I haven't really ever felt were finished. So I really appreciate that, you sharing that that quote, and that feeling and that sense of kind of permission, I guess. Maybe it's a kind of a permission that we can give ourselves to not feel like we have to always have everything, polished and perfect when we put it out in the world, to accept that dirtiness or grittiness or messiness even,
Yeah, I think it's nice to, and it's helpful to like lend a piece that you made its own agency, its own sort of identity beyond yourself to, like, that's kind of the idea, is to kind of, I don't know, for a lot of us to make these sort of other separate things to look at and walk around. I don't know. Yeah, it's just a helpful state of mind for me.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'd love to open the door, window, viewpoint, Glenn, call anyone. I just see Glenn opened up in Putu. Yeah, so I'm just gonna, Glenn, go ahead.
Hey, Jay, it struck me when you were describing your project and kind of career directions for this master's degree involving connecting or engaging diverse communities with environmentalism or environmentalism in art. Is that correct? Am I going down? Is that correct? In some ways, that's a huge issue, as you've discovered, right? And I don't see many people really tackling this. But sound studies and environmental sound art, ecoacoustics, acoustic ecology, all these sound-based climate change arenas that are so important in scientific research now are very, very far away and far apart from, like, the BIPOC communities and the real issues of climate change where they happen, right? But we're actually going down similar paths. So I found that really interesting, and we should maybe touch base later on the side, and I'd like to hear about what you're doing. But I'm coming out with an article called "Take It Outside, People: Connecting Ecoacoustics and Improvised Music," specifically for those reasons, and connecting, what some of the things we did in electroacoustic ensemble with Black experimental music, and free improvisation theory with ecoacoustics. Anyways, I'm looking forward to hearing how your work shapes up.
Cool. Yeah. Interesting.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's really amazing how, the science and music, or science and the arts, are starting to get a little bit more like voice, or programs are being developed around the union, of scientists and artists. I'm really fascinated with that. Really, really fascinated. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to start really thinking about how us as artists and this artistic way of thinking can communicate and interact. You talked about residencies before, but talking about how we can interact and collaborate with such a wide variety of industry, and different industries that are out there.
Hey, Jay, I want to ask you, who are your other colleagues from the arts? From what areas do they come?
In my program, there's not many art people. There's a dancer and choreographer, and he's the most arty person. I'm around a lot of like science and writing people, which is cool, who have been like hobbyists in a lot of ways. Like some of them have been like hobbyist dancers or like just kind of recreational people, but it's not very arty. Yeah, there's like one other like arts background guy who's Shane Skopatz. He's an awesome dancer, and I'm working with him on stuff. But yeah, he's in his thesis time and trying to. He would do a performance and choreograph this thing, but now he's trying to do this film of stuff, and it's interesting seeing that.
Interesting. Oh, cool. I'll let someone else ask a question.
Yeah, how about Putu?
Hi, Jay.
Hey.
Just wanted to say thank you for this. This is awesome. As a professional, I'm really excited for where you're going and where you've always been heading. And as a friend, I'm really proud of you. So always good to see you and collaborate. Your thoughts, but I have a question, and this is something you sort of alluded to in your talk today, in the myriad of ways that you're assessing the world and assessing yourself in it. And I'll contextualize the question a little bit in that you were alluding to your place as an artist and as a human being in relation to other animals. So you specifically said whales, which tends to be a huge thing that musicians, a huge entity, quite literally, musicians and other artists associate with, right? And I was wondering a little bit if you've thought, or your perspective on humans' positions on this sort of superimposition on what we think animals want or need, when like in reality we're never going to know exactly. So can you talk a little bit about that if you have ideas?
Sure. Yeah, like it's a complicated situation, right? Like we've just had this like whole colonial capitalist history of trying to, the Enlightenment brought up these whole ideas of mechanization and how we can control the levers of the environment to do what we want. And we're still working hard to break out of that in large, like kind of worldview ways, like deciding what the role of the whale is. If you want to, like, I've just been reading about like bowhead whales in the Bering Strait sort of stuff. And like their hunters knew that they were intelligent. So when numbers depleted, they thought they were just escaping and hiding somewhere, right? Like, so it's like this, there's these strange relationships of like giving agency, but not really, because you need to eat and you need this job to survive. So there's a whole myriad of complicated situations with deciding what is good for animals. And overall the idea, and that's kind of like general environmentalism stuff. And in general, like the goal should more be like an Aldo Leopold idea of broadening your community and giving care and agency to all humans as well as non-human people, like non-human animals, non-living situation, like non-living things. They all have their place in the big pyramid of this network. And that giving agency is really tied to like kind of art concepts of materiality and knowing those sort of things. I don't know if this answers much of your question, but that's kind of the like mode of thinking I would take on it.
Yeah, thank you. That answers quite a lot of what I had in my mind. So
yeah. And like typical, I'll add one chunk on, is like typical environmentalism tends to like skip over the social idea, like all these like all these like white folks in Patagonia vests are really eager to extend their community to squirrels or whales or things that, but not people of color or the queer community or any, you know, it's like it has, you can't just skip over shit like that.
Totally. And yeah, I'll just respond briefly in that we've had conversations about this in the past before, and I've really admired your perspective. And it's those moments where people are trying to create sound installations where they try and recreate or preserve quote unquote nature of the past, but in doing so, they're removing like the human, like literally removing humans and social aspects of that. To, oh, we have this weird kind of utopic idea of what nature should sound like, but it's like if you get rid of the humans, right, as you're saying, then that what's the point? Like it's kind of, that's that kind of a assertion that you're talking about here, where it's really selfish.
Yeah, it is selfish to think that we are apart from nature or that we are separate or above it. That sort of dualism has not served us well. Like that's why when we took over, you know, like when white folks took over running the forest, like it, and eliminating Native American indigenous populations, things didn't go so great because like indigenous populations were really part of that ecosystem. It didn't, you know, there's effects of everything. So yeah, correct.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is environmental justice is about all of the systems that are in part or form part of the environment. Bernie Krause talks about the various soundscapes, the anthrophony, the biophony, and the geophony, right? So this idea that, you know, the anthrophony are the sounds that humans make, the biophony is the sounds that are biological, you know, beings, and then the geophony is that which is non-biological, like thunderstorms or waterfalls or oceans or, you know, things of that sort. Has that kind of research played into your research as well? Or
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just curious because I'm talking about this with my sound art class. So I was just curious.
Yeah, it's just starting to. Yeah, I'm just starting to like get back into sort of readings on these sort of like ecoacoustic ideas and stuff. So and jumping back into like being part of the discourse on sound art and stuff, which I haven't been very involved with lately. Like environmental justice is a pretty like a direct movement of like BIPOC, largely female-led movements, because these populations are most directly affected by climate change problems and societal situations, like putting industrial incinerators, you know, in these areas. It's the pipeline problems. It's all of that, and then there's like kind of that sort of ecocentric thinking that like we're all part of this whole thing in a big net. So yeah, kind of like philosophies and like movements.
Wow, so cool. I'd love to open the door again to all students, anyone who wants to speak up. I think you should just speak up or put something in the chat so I know, because I can't really see everyone at the same time. So anybody want to ask a question or is curious about maybe deepening the conversation in an area? See, there's a lot of you here. I know Connor, you've been working with some sound art kind of work.
Brian Phipps is.
Yeah. I'm interested in hearing more about specific works of yours, specific sound art works and stuff like that.
Oh.
Or
sorry.
specific processes that you
Sorry, that was
employ?
Connor. Brian, you'll be next. So Connor, I think that was Connor speaking just now. So yeah.
Yeah, specific sound art works that I have done. Man, I haven't done much like over the last few years exactly. Like I've done some things for film stuff a lot. Like we've with basement films, we did a lot of quasi installation pieces where we'd have film running, and I would sometimes like just record a soundscape or play a soundscape for that sort of stuff, which was really cool. It just like really thickens the environment. And we used to work in this big old, used to be a big school that was transitioned into a bunch of artist studios, and the basement was really, just like really grimy and strange and echoey. And that was really fun. I've done a lot of live scoring stuff when I was in Albuquerque. That was kind of like a weird little niche thing that I fell into that was really fun. So I would live score the cabinet of Dr. Caligari at Tractor Brewing Company every Halloween. And that's the most people I ever get to my shows. It was like advertised, and it was really, really fun to just, play for this. And it was unique. And that's kind of the work I've done. I would love to do more sound art, sound installation stuff, but the last few years, it's all been pretty like contemporary singer-songwriter-y stuff, kind of regular. Process-wise, though, I'm not sure. Yeah, no, I rarely have a defined process to go about things with, and that's kind of what I'm trying to develop in getting back into academia and learning and documenting and giving myself license to think about things deeply again, which I haven't been able to do for some of the years.
And I also find, like, just from watching my peers and also myself, my experience is that I go through phases, so I'm in this sort of phase now, and then I go through another phase, and at each phase I'm sort of developing a new language or a vocabulary. And then that gets transitioned into the next phase. And then I use that and I bring it along with me while I get into a new learning phase. And so I think all of that's going to come with you,
Yeah.
And you are doing a kind of a sound artwork with this intermedia stuff. So
definitely. Yeah.
Sound art is also performative and collaborative in that way. So.
Yeah, definitely. It's just hard to put some words and titleage on it. I need to I'm trying to read up on the discourse and try and figure out where the state of the conversation is and all those grad schooly terms.
Oh my gosh, and it's funny because you are creating the discourse and you are creating new vocabulary words, so I think it's also important to just, tell the students this too, like, a lot of stuff that we're doing now, a lot of the sort of undefinable, hard, like mushy kind of area that a lot of us are actually in, or that we're encouraging you to be in, this amorphous kind of, I don't know what it's called, this undefinable place. Let's just create the words, like, let's just make up the vocabulary because you're it, Yeah, exactly. Like Puti's like grad school terms, blah, like totally, like whatever that does that mean? You're it. You are making the terms. So yeah. I think I just want you to feel, and all of us to feel, like empowered that we can do this. Brian, I think you had something you wanted to ask.
Yeah, hi Jay. I was just curious about when you compose music, what inspires you, and more importantly than that, when you're failing to find inspiration for a new song, what techniques do you have to kind of find inspiration and creativity to compose a track? Because I feel like creativity can come in waves, and when you're in that low spot, it can be difficult to find new ways to be creative again.
Yeah, shit. I mean, it's it's a hard thing to do. Things that inspire me, a lot of things. So I've kind of tracked. So I kind of just record a bunch of things all the time, and I give it a lot of time, and then I sort through it as a listener, and I kind of divide it up based off of like these all kind of have this sort of theme, and these all kind of have this sort of theme, and these are, I don't know what these are. This is an unfinished idea. It should probably go away, but I can't throw it out, sort of thing. That helped me kind of define my themes that I tend to write on. That I tend to like. I kind of have this like grit textural sort of thing that I always fall into. I kind of have this like dark noir-y sort of thing that I fall into. And then I have like this really kind of twee, beautiful, nostalgic sort of thing that I fall into. And those are kind of like the three categories that I kind of have figured out that I do. And so it's not so much about the things that inspire me, but because I kind of get inspired like stupidly often, but it rarely has the channel to go through. It's because I can just sit there and watch leaves fall, or you know, I don't know, watch a dripping thing reflect on another piece of metal or something. You know, like I just enjoy that sort of stuff, but it's hard to know where to channel it. So if I'm like, okay, I'm kind of doing this way, I can set up a sort of system to like take a video of it, and maybe that turns into a song lyric, or maybe it turns into another thing. But yeah, sometimes I'm not inspired to write at all. And honestly, I just don't. I just listen, which is the kind of typical feedback. Like you just listen at that point, which is fine. Yeah, I'm an avid listener too. I just do that. And I don't know. I haven't really been pressured to like compose in a while. It's been something, it's my full-time job that I don't get paid for. So it's kind of easy to let it ride. Not very helpful when you're a composition student like yourself and having to churn things out. You know, it's a really hard thing, and I don't know how to do it very well.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think what I want to just follow up on that, Brian. I think what I'm hearing is that what you're doing, Jay, is you're just making things. You're just collecting sounds and images and not really like, you're just sort of indiscriminate. Like, I'm just going to collect this. I'm just going to make this. I'm just going to do this. And then later you're categorizing, you're noticing themes. Like later, right. Then you can sort of like make these determinations if they fall in sort of an area. And I think that's a really good, and I'm going to call this advice because I think it is advice. I think it is a kind of a way of processing what we do, that we have to immediately not judge it. We just have to like, just make stuff, just collect stuff, just do things, and don't worry about it, you know, what it is, you know, and then later, you know, with an objective sort of separated, you know, listening attitude, you can sort of start to see the puzzle, or, you know, make sense out of it. Yeah. So I think that's a really great approach. I think really useful, and you can find the inspiration without even knowing that it's there, you know. I think that's separating out. It's really great.
Yeah, it's sort
that's
of
great advice.
Yeah, like a right drunk, edit sober sort of theme, Mark Twain quote or something. But yeah,
that's wonderful. Yeah. Well, we're running up to the end of our time here. I just wanted to know if there was one more comment or question, anything someone else who was maybe too shy, you can write it in the chat window. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to share, any of the composers, maybe Noel or Jeremy or anyone. Mackenzie's a singer. Yeah, what, you know, Kitty, Amy Dunn, Andrew, if anybody else has anything else to share. You guys are all really quiet. Maybe Cyrus, Jenna, I don't know. John, you're here. Mateo, if you have anything to say.
I was gonna say there are quite a few composers in our audience this afternoon. Many good, many very industrious, very energetic composers that I'm sure have a good question on that they want to ask.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear whatever. We're just really glad you're all here. Yeah, so well, it is hard because, you know, we're not all together, and so it's a harder venue, this one, you know, to really feel connected. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, John.
I do have a quick question for you, Jay. Thank you for being here today, by the way. This has really been fantastic, and it just confirms, as a newer person to the area, it just confirms to me that UCCS has been on the cutting edge on multiple fronts for some time. And I wondered if I could throw just a quick nuts and bolts question to you regarding, since being out of the academy and now coming back into the academy, what have you done, and what advice could you give to keep technology chops up to date? You know, technology moves very, very quickly. They're out of the software that I myself use. Several things are already ready for another version update. You know, and technologies change. The way we interact with these technologies change. Have you found it easier or more of a disciplined approach to keep your chops current? And do you think about that, or is it something that even figures into the way you work? What could you tell us about how that impacts your life?
Yeah. So like I have learned that I am not a tech guy. Like there was times in college where I would love to sit around and talk about pedals with people all night long. These days those conversations kind of grate on me. I've also not been very wealthy, so I'm always like generations behind tech wise, which so I refer to like a flea quote from like this weird a bass lesson DVD someone gave me in like from the late 90s or something. And he's like, I don't know, if you're a musician, he's like, I'm not really into gear. You just make whatever you have sound good. And that's kind of what I apply to stuff. It's like, sometimes I'm really limited by tech. I'm in like a better financial situation than I've ever been in right now, where I can buy tech and I'm still really stingy. I'm like, just like, I don't know, classic situations where I'm like, I don't want to pay that much for this. And my wife's like, well, we can, and it'll be fine. You just get it. It'll be fine. So like staying up to date can be really important if it's like really tied to your vision and what you want to do. I just like to connect tech with ideas rather than just get lost in the technical aspect, right? I'm just not a very good like logisticist. So I like to tie it to an idea, and then I can really make use of tech however I need to, or the best way that I can. I don't know if that particularly answers the question, but that's kind of how I approach it. And that's the fun stuff, is applying it, I guess.
And it does. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I wondered if you would have a plug for open source technology out there. You know, for every cool whiz bang application that we use, there's an open source free version out there. And you know, there's a community and an ecology that supports this movement and really touches upon the environmental ecologies and social justice issues. You know, it's about availability and equity and things like that, so that once we're out of the academy and we don't always have access to the $1,000 piece of software, we know what to do when we come to the trimmed down kind of garish version of the open source version of that. Just by the way, what do you use to record your sounds throughout the day?
I use the DAW I use is Logic. That's what I learned at UCCS, so I've kind of just stuck with it. It has its pros and its cons. There are things that I would love to learn, but it's like, I don't want to start over again. I don't want to pay for another thing. Like FL Studios has awesome stuff. Ableton's gotten so good, but you know, I got what I got, and I kind of just sit with that until it doesn't work anymore. But I agree that those open source ideas and those ideas of the commons are really important and are something to be a part of as well as utilize. It's more than a resource. It's a societal benefit and can be really meaningful work indeed. It's a good thing to plug.
Oh yeah, thank you, and thanks for that Logic Pro. We've got some Logic Pro addicts in our midst that I'm sure enjoyed hearing you mention that you use Logic Pro a lot.
Yeah, we do have some Logic Pro people here. Yep, Wiley, and I know Jenna and a bunch of other people. Picking a doll feels like too big of a commitment. Oh, Mealy, I mean, it's not. They're really. It's okay.
It's like all the same. You just pick one.
Yeah, exactly. And don't overthink it too much.
Yeah.
Reaper's free, or not free, but it's not very expensive. You can try that one out for a while.
Yeah.
So don't. Yeah, it was really wonderful. I'm gonna. I guess I'm going to close up and tie it all up. Yeah, Evelyn. Yeah, using Pro Tools. Yep, Pro Tools. We've got a Pro Tools crew here as well. I'm a Pro Tools beginner. I started out in Pro Tools, and that will always be my thing. But we all have so many different. There's so many options now that it's really kind of nice. Yeah, thank you. Wow. Jay, thank you so much. This was just so great to hear about what you're doing. You're really the model VAPA interdisciplinary person. You know, you're really out there in the world. You're exploring so many different avenues and collaborating with so many different kinds of people, and you're really open, you know, to serve, you know, to find what your purpose is, and to, as you say, you know, choose meaningful work. I think it's it's just very touching and beautiful to witness your growth and where you're going in your trajectory. So thank you so much for taking your time to share yourself with us today. I do believe the students are really appreciative. I know they're quiet, but I can imagine so many. And so, yeah, so put any thank yous in the chat, maybe open up your mics and give Jay a big shout of appreciation, and let us all know that you're here and that you appreciate his time and share with us. So thank you, Jay. Let's be in touch. Yay. Let's give a hand. Woo-hoo.